and a warm welcome to another edition of To The Point. On the show this week, journalist, author and the current National General Secretary of BJP, Mr. Ram Madhav. Welcome on To The Point. Starting with you with the 3 years achievements of Modi government, what have been the biggest challenges?
No, we inherited many challenges, but 3 years down the line, any government should be rated by number one, its performance. And how do you judge the performance? You have to look at how people perceive the government. From that standpoint, the Modi ji's government in last 3 years has been a very popular government. It has time and again sought the approval and secured the approval of the people. Successive elections have shown it. And today also across the country, any survey you undertake, it shows growing popularity of the Prime Minister and his government. It shows, I mean, it's a rarity in politics for a government which is in power for so many years. Normally, the popularity starts dipping. In this case,
after 3 years,
it is on the rise after 3 years also. It shows that definitely the government is popular.
There is no doubt about the popularity of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. All the surveys point out that he's almost like a formidable leader, which has not happened in the past. If you look at the history of leaders like Indira Gandhi or Jawaharlal Nehru, obviously they did not reach that stature at which we find Narendra Modi currently. But, questions are also being asked that it's only because of the popularity of Narendra Modi ji, but what about if you see the party in isolation? What is BJP without Narendra Modi?
No, this is an effort to, I mean, it's a futile effort to try and separate Modi from BJP. Modi ji, his government, BJP, it's all together one entity. Modi ji is not separate from BJP. Modi ji, you cannot separate him from his government. You cannot say Modi is popular, government is bad. It doesn't work that way. But somebody who wants to only criticize his government, he may say that no, Modi is popular, BJP is not.
But if you look at the democratic institution of the country, as part of every democracy, opposition is a very important component. What is your view when you look at the assessment of the opposition in our country at the moment? Obviously, if you look at the parties in isolation like Congress, maybe TMC or DMK, AIDMK, they are all established in their own pockets, but at the same time, their assimilation, their coming together is something which is unthinkable at the moment. So how would you really assess the opposition in the country?
As a politician of the ruling party, I will be the happiest person if opposition is in such shambles.
But isn't it also a cause of worry?
Come on, it is not the ruling party's responsibility to look after the unity of the opposition party.
No,
it is their own, their botheration. Having said it, as a person who believes in a lively, vibrant, successful democracy, yes, I do feel that we need a good, coherent, strong opposition voice in this country, which we don't find today. It is all dissipated, it's all disintegrated, it is all directionless opposition that we see today.
If you talk about the issues which in the past opposition has raked, we saw issues like Ghar Wapsi, we saw issues like Award Wapsi. All those things, came up with a phenomena and it came with a whimper and it just went away. Obviously, maybe the substance was not there and the opposition couldn't come along, they couldn't become a credible voice and they couldn't convince the people on what they were saying. Maybe the language of politics was wrong. But when you take the serious issues on the ground, for example, I would take the first issue that is related to the job creation, which many economists and papers like Huffington Post and the international journals are also writing about the fact that the job creation hasn't been very encouraging in the country. To quote you the figures, the average employment generation has plummeted to less than 2 lakh jobs a year. Are these not worrying signs for the government?
Firstly, about the whole Wapsi gang, since you have raised that issue. No, trying to make non-issues into issues through these Wapsi slogans. What finally happened was they all have gone waps to their homes. No place in the political arena today. You don't see them today. I mean, those who were returning their awards, today you find them anywhere. Coming to the substantive issue that you have raised about job creation or lack of job creation, etc. This phenomena has been going on in this country for last 1 decade or so. where the number of people becoming employable every year was close to 20 million every year. I mean, 20 million people are joining that bandwagon of 18 years. Whereas our job creation was very less, like, 2 lakhs, 5 lakhs, 3 lakhs, like this. What the economists probably are not taking into account in the last couple of years is the amount of effort made for self-employment schemes towards self-employment. Today, thousands of crores of money has been dispersed in the last couple of years, last 2 years especially, under Stand Up India, under Mudra, under other schemes of this government, for people to start their own employment, their own self-employment opportunities. I'm sure if you take those into account, things are definitely improving. Having said it, the formal employment, there is a definite cause of concern that has to pick up more.
But last year I remember when the employment figures came, the government really got worried, and they said that we will include the service sector also, and they increased the gamut and they enhanced the gamut of the job creation, the way they look at it. Is there something wrong really in the technique of data gathering when you talk about the current job creation scenario?
I don't blame any data gathering technique. I would only say that probably the area that they are covering in terms of measuring the job creation and all is not enough, is not full. Probably there are areas outside of that, their data collection, there are areas where jobs are being created.
So by when can we expect that these self-employment figures also would get associated with the current figures which are coming out?
As the years pass by, you will definitely get all the data in. I mean, job creation is one of the utmost priority areas for us. Prime Minister's entire Make in India program is aimed at job creation essentially.
So you wouldn't agree with the opposition when they say that government perhaps is living in a denial mode if, when they talk about employment figures?
No. Who is denying? These figures cannot be denied. They are all figures available through official agencies only. I'm not saying some private people are giving this data. But outside of that, there is some economic activity happening. We probably have to take that into account.
Another cause of worry, and perhaps the opposition has got a handle to whip the government with, is the farmers' riots, which are happening in Maharashtra, in Madhya Pradesh. What is going wrong? Is the policy towards the farmers going errant somewhere from the government side? What is the actual scenario?
No, the government has done so much for the welfare of the farmers in the last 2 years, right up to going to the level of, insurance schemes, soil health cards, making loans available at very low interest rates, lot of activity, using technology, training them in using technology and every of these aspects.
In fact, I have seen these things happening in front of my own eyes when I went to the field. I spoke to the farmers who talked about the soil health cards, insurance schemes. All that is there on the ground. These are facilities available for the farmers. But what worries the analysts is that despite all these facilities provided to the farmers by the government, you see a scenario where farmers across the country, they are coming together on a platform, they are speaking against the government. So is it something which is the farmers' unrest? Is it something political, or it is a symptom of some kind of a socio-economic disease, I could say?
Look, the issue around which the whole agitation is centered today, what you see in some states happening, is about loan waiver, the debts that the farmers are suffering from. They want those debts to be waived. It's a big economic challenge for any government. It's natural that today agriculture sector still faces challenges when it comes to procurement. There is good crop, good production, agriculture is doing well, but the end of it is where the procurement happens. If that end part is not properly addressed, then there will be sufferings. That is what we see in some areas. It's not happening across the country. I don't agree that everywhere it is happening. In some areas, especially with regard to loan waivers, farmers are agitating. Where our governments are facing this agitation, there the governments are handling it with all responsibility. I don't blame the agitations on the political parties. But having said it, it's very unfortunate that when such agitations happen, everybody should take it as responsibility. Yeah, after all, if a farmer is agitating, we have to find a solution to it. Instead, you are finding photo opportunities there. You are trying to further aggravate the agitations. You are encouraging violence. Why should there be violence in these agitations unless politicians encourage it?
Okay. Taking you to the Kashmir problem now, you yourself have visited Kashmir so many times, you've spoken to the people. Why it appears, you know, the past 3 years, the way the government has interacted or has spoken to your ally BDP on the problem, the big idea on Kashmir somewhere is lacking if you talk about the current government.
No, if there is a problem in Kashmir today, it is a problem for the entire country to look at, understand. It's not a party problem, first of all. One has to be very clear. I'm not saying you said it. I'm saying generally to the people. They should not be looked from the prism of BJP, PDP or NC Congress. No, don't look at it that way. There is an effort from day one. There has been an effort from day one in Jammu Kashmir to somehow oust our government there. There is a great discomfiture in certain sections, especially across the border in Pakistan. They are not comfortable with the idea that a government led by BJP and PDP is at the helm of affairs in Kashmir. That section is trying its best to create unrest in the valley. Now, it's very easy in the valley to stoke this kind of unrest by simply resorting to slogans like Azadi, etc. That is what is happening today. It's a challenge for the government, both in the state, right, and also at the center. We are trying to handle it. Problem comes when national parties and the intelligentsia in Delhi, TV studios and all start make it into a political issue. It's not a political issue.
My question to you is that Narendra Modi government always has spoken about an out-of-the-box idea for the problems in the country. BJP has suggested that we will come out with something new. But as far as your party's or your government's approach towards Kashmir is concerned, we almost see your party following the Manmohan Singh line of thought. We almost find you following the Congress path, towards Kashmir.
Now, on the contrary, we are the ones who stood very firm on issues like no compromise with separatists, no question of trying to appease Hurriyat conference, etc., who are the main culprits behind the unrest in the valley. They get money from across the borders. They are funded for this unrest. 90% of the funds disappear into the coffers of these leaders. Remaining 10% is distributed to innocent people. Those innocent people in the valley are made the scapegoats. So we are the ones who said nothing to do with these groups.
But why is this a perception which has been given about the current government that for the current government, Kashmir is only about Pakistan and terrorism? So that's the idea. But your idea of developing Kashmir, your idea of giving jobs to the youths in Kashmir, that is not emanating in any of the TV channels or through any of the newspapers.
That is why I said people sitting in Delhi studios should understand that Kashmir is not a political issue to discuss like this. Your government is not doing this, your government is not doing this. There, our main focus, we have extended a package of 80,000 crores. We want to undertake a lot of developmental activity there. These separatist groups, precisely their aim is not to allow that to happen. Once development takes place, there is no place for violence. People do not get attracted to these groups.
You have an ally which is there as part of the state government in the form of PDP. Why can't we see a highly publicized policy paper, describing the terms and references that, look, this is the way we're going to develop Kashmir? That we don't find too much of it happening.
Our agenda of alliance very clearly stipulates or very clearly articulates what we want to achieve in the valley and in the other two regions of the state. It's a very comprehensive document. We have talked about individual dam projects also in that.
But why
so it's a detailed thing. No, that's what I'm saying. In Delhi, you don't want to look at those things. When you look at them, you will say you have not fulfilled your agenda in that. Our challenge is we have violence on one hand which needs to be contained. For that we need to make a lot of effort. At the same time, we have to take the agenda of alliance forward, which we are trying to do.
I will not name the PDP leaders with whom we spoke and interacted during the parliament session, but off the camera they did mention that there is an effort from the BJP's end to moderate PDP, and which has led to some kind of a credibility crisis for them in the valley. Would you agree that?
No, if somebody says to be moderate is a credibility crisis, I don't know what do they mean. I mean, in politics, everybody has to be a moderate. I should be a moderate. They should be a moderate. To be a moderate is not a wrong thing.
Taking you to the recent decision which was taken by the government on the ban on the cow sale for slaughter. What was the idea behind doing it? Because there are various sections of the society which somehow they feel that it's towards the larger Hindutva agenda. Some say that it's cow protection is in some ways encouraging vegetarianism in the country. You eat this, you don't eat that. So that those kind of curbs, it hints at those kind of curbs.
No, that is precisely what I said. Today, for want of any issues, people try and confuse issues, misrepresent them. You see, what happened was, during the previous government regime, there was a parliamentary committee headed by a senior Congress leader, which was facing with the issue of cattle being smuggled into neighboring countries illegally for slaughter purposes. That parliamentary committee had made a strong recommendation to the then government, which was obviously UPA government, that we should put a ban on cattle to be smuggled across the borders for slaughtering purposes. Now that matter has subsequently gone before the Supreme Court. Supreme Court has asked the concerned ministry in government to formulate certain guidelines for regulating this cattle being illegally exported for slaughter purposes. Now there is a Supreme Court directive to the government. So government has come up with some guidelines which said that cattle which is meant for dairy purposes and agriculture purposes should not be illegally taken away for slaughter purposes, which is a very, very genuine issue. I mean, in this country, large scale dependence on cattle for agriculture and dairy purposes is still a reality. You don't import your milk from Australia or New Zealand. You have sufficient milk production happening in this country.
So if I go by the explanation which you have just given, what happens if you talk about the economic fallout of the direction which has been given by the Supreme Court, and despite the fact that the government will come out with the guidelines as to how you're going to deal with this situation, what about the economic fallout? What happens to the meat industry which involves so many thousands of
Definitely, all of them have a right to go back to the Supreme Court. Come back to the government. Now, I am saying you are only talking about the economic costs of meat industry. You are not talking about the economic costs of small farmers. Look at both the costs, which is to be taken care of, how to balance these two things. Government is open to the idea of discussing with every section. But please understand that there was a Supreme Court directive to the government under which government has formulated certain guidelines. These guidelines are open. I mean, people, if they come up with better suggestions, government is open. In fact, I understand the minister has said it in so many words that the government is open to suggestions.
I was reading a column somewhere which said that there is an effort to homogenize the society into a Hindutva society based on the hatred for Muslims. So, these are the kind of stark perceptions which are coming out with guidelines like these, or with the directions which the Supreme Court has given. How is the government going to dispel this kind of a view?
No,
because
this is all.
The opposition has got a handle. They will go out to the people, tell them.
Nobody believes in what opposition says in these matters, because our track record shows that here is a government which really cares for each and every citizen of this country. We have not imposed anything on the people. So our track record is the answer to all this criticism. That's the reason why all this propaganda campaign and all this is limited to the TV studios in Delhi. Outside, no impact. That the opposition knows.
Sonia Gandhi, during the recently held the working committee meeting, she said that they are all TV per heroes Maidan mein zero. That is the statement she made.
No, probably she should look at their own party. I mean, what they are doing. They are heroes where? She should see. Their heroism we have seen in Uttar Pradesh. Their heroism we have seen all over the country. If she thinks that her son and all of them are great heroes, so be it. How can I say anything about that?
Okay. Taking you to the foreign policy bit now. Obviously, there has been an unusual kind of an energy and vigor with the way Narendra Modi ji has pursued the foreign policy. But the most worrying signs come out when you talk about the foreign policy towards China and Pakistan. Has the government faltered somewhere when you deal with China and Pakistan?
Not really. On the contrary, with China, in these last 3 years, at one level, we stood firm on our interests. We have not compromised on the issues where our sovereignty, our interests are concerned. But at the same time, our relations, we have not allowed those relations to deteriorate. Look at the latest meeting of leaders at Astana. The kind of bonhomie, the kind of friendship. You see what happens is, what transpires in those meetings, not everything comes out into public domain. It cannot come out. But it was such a cordial meeting, such a good meeting, that if anybody today tries to say that relations have deteriorated, etc., etc., it's absolutely far from the reality. Our relations are intact. We have issues on which India has to take a stand. For example, Belt and Road is an issue in which major sovereignty questions are involved for India. Not just India, I tell you, even China would not tolerate when certain sovereignty issues come in the way. That is how countries protect their sovereignty. There we are not compromising.
But what about
Otherwise,
Pakistan?
our relations with China are definitely on ascendancy. We will maintain those relations well.
But what
With
about
Pakistan, you remember, Pakistan is a difficult neighbor. Not just we. Every government has faced difficulty. Manmohan Singh has not talked to Pakistan for one full year after 2008. That was the situation at that time. So right now, we have difficulties in dealing with Pakistan, but at the international level, on the international arena, we have been successful through our sustained campaign to bring in a lot of pressure on Pakistan to behave. That is the way to go about. Pakistan today is definitely a problem for India. But Pakistan is not just a problem for India alone, it is a global problem.
The current government certainly has been successful in isolating Pakistan on the international fora. But when you talk vis-a-vis Pakistan and the domestic movements within the country, we've seen that there's a lot of hyper-nationalism which is happening with reference to Kashmir or with reference to the way the things are being trolled on the social media. Do you get a sense of some kind of a hyper-nationalism?
Don't use these phrases, they apply both ways. If you say somebody is hyper-nationalist, somebody will say so-and-so is hyper-anti-nationalist.
Okay.
How do you describe a former member of Parliament of Congress Party calling the army chief Sadakka Gunda? Though there will be a youngster who will say he is a hyper-anti-nationalist. If there is hyper-nationalism, there is hyper-anti-nationalism. So don't go by that kind of discourse. Today, what is happening is, India has a very democratic media in the form of social media, which you and I cannot control. It's democratic media. People express their views there.
But despite
have
the
tolerance.
media being democratic,
When you used to abuse everybody as communalist, fundamentalist, you means not you. When people used to abuse, for example, us as fundamentalist, communalist, anti-Muslim, anti-this, this was all very sober propaganda. If somebody says here you are a Pakistani, it becomes anti and it's hyper nationalism. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
When you had the right to abuse, you abused everybody.
But
today it is coming back to you.
Right.
You are so much disturbed.
But despite the social media being so democratic, if you look at the latest freedom of press index, India has come down from 180 to 136. People say that there is an effort to gag the journalists, there is an effort to, if the people are speaking overtly against the government, there is an effort to silence them.
Totally false. Totally false. In fact, it reflects, you are actually saying that India's journalists are so meek. Are you saying that you agree on this show? You are saying that India's journalists are so meek, so weak, so spineless that they will succumb under some pressure. Are you saying that? Then where is the question of any freedom of expression being under danger? These are the kind of propaganda we are indulging in this country. Day in and day out, government is facing attacks on the TV studios. If today somebody is strongly talking in support of certain programs of the government, you are isolating him. You within the fraternity also you think. If there is really any such thing, I would urge every press person, every media person to stand up. Don't succumb to any pressure. Stand up.
I hope
But who is stopping you?
I hope through this program you would not say that I didn't try to allow you to speak.
I'm not saying. See, the very fact that you have the right to ask that question, being a representative of Rajya Sabha TV, shows that there is no gag. Who is gagging you? You are free to ask these questions. I am accountable to answer to these questions. But I say that I don't rate Indian journalists as so meek and so weak and so spineless that they will succumb to any pressures and all. I don't consider that way.
It was a pleasure talking to you, Mr. Madhav. Thank you so much. So that's it on this episode of To The Point. See you next time with another personality. Goodbye and thanks for watching.